You are seeing this because you have begun to sense something shifting in your relationships. The subtle hostility, the withdrawn affection, the inexplicable coldness from people who once celebrated you. This is not a coincidence. You are finally ready to understand the psychological warfare that happens beneath the surface of human connection, the silent war that wages itself when you begin to evolve. I have discovered throughout my work that before any significant personal transformation, the psyche emits specific signals. These signals manifest not just internally, but in the external world through the reactions of others. Most people miss them. They stay stuck in confusion, blaming themselves, wondering what they did wrong, never understanding the deeper pattern at play. Right now, in this exact moment, you are standing at the gateway between being controlled by collective expectations and claiming your psychological sovereignty, between remaining small to keep others comfortable and expanding into your authentic power. The hatred you sense is not random, it is a response. And understanding this response will change everything about how you move through the world. Here is what terrifies most people about understanding why others suddenly turn against them. It is not the loss of relationships. It is the realization that your growth threatens the psychological equilibrium of everyone around you. This is what I call the golden shadow phenomenon. You possess qualities, power, and potential that you have kept hidden to maintain social harmony. When these qualities begin to emerge, when you stop dimming your light, the people around you do not celebrate, they attack. We apologize for our success, we downplay our achievements, we make ourselves smaller in conversation. Why? Because we have been taught that our brightness is an assault on others, that our evolution is a judgment of their stagnation. And here is the truth that most people cannot face. The hatred you experience when you begin to individuate is not about you. It is about the mirror you hold up to others. Your transformation forces them to confront their own unrealized potential. Your courage highlights their cowardice. Your growth exposes their comfort with decay. You can no longer pretend this is about something you did wrong, some social mistake you made, some personality flaw that needs correction. The hatred is a response to your emergence. And that terrifies people more than staying invisible ever could. Before we go deeper, you need to understand why people suddenly start hating you when you begin to evolve. It is not because you became arrogant. It is not because success changed you. It is not because you abandoned your values or betrayed your relationships. You have been addicted to being the safe choice, the predictable one, the person who never threatens the group dynamic by claiming too much power or demanding too much respect. This addiction kept you connected. It kept you belonging. But it also kept you imprisoned. Your brain interprets your emergence as a threat because emergence means exile. For millions of years, exile from the tribe meant death. Your nervous system still carries this ancient program. When you begin to individuate, when you stop performing the role that keeps others comfortable, your brain floods you with anxiety. It tells you to go back, to apologize, to shrink again. I have spent decades studying this pattern. I watched patients approach their greatest breakthroughs only to implode at the last moment, not because they lacked ability, but because they could not tolerate the hatred that their transformation triggered in others. A woman finally leaves an abusive relationship. Her family turns against her. They call her selfish. They say she is destroying the family. They pressure her to return. A man starts a business after years of wage slavery. His friends mock him. They call him delusional. They predict his failure with barely concealed satisfaction. A person sets boundaries with toxic relatives. They are labeled difficult, ungrateful, cold. The collective pressure to return to dysfunction becomes overwhelming. I realized this was not weakness on the part of these individuals. This was not poor judgment or bad timing. This was the psyche protecting itself from the terror of transformation. This was the collective unconscious using hatred as a tool to maintain the status quo. Because transformation means death, not physical death, psychological death, the death of the compliant self, the acceptable self, the self that kept everyone comfortable at the cost of your soul. Right now, your psyche is preparing for that death, and everyone around you senses it. They hate you for it before you have even fully claimed it. There are specific signs that reveal when this turn is coming, when the silent war is about to begin. The first sign is what Jung called enantiodromia, the sudden emergence of the opposite. You have been playing small, and suddenly you feel an overwhelming urge to claim space. You have been agreeable, and suddenly you find yourself disagreeing with everything. You have been invisible, and suddenly you want to be seen. Most people interpret this as instability, mood swings, a phase. I understand this differently. This is the psyche correcting years of imbalance. This is your suppressed power finally demanding expression. When people sense this shift in you, when they feel your energy changing, the hatred begins. Not because you are doing anything to them, but because your internal shift disrupts the role you played in their psychological ecosystem. The second sign is loss of interest. Things that used to comfort you suddenly feel empty. People you used to tolerate suddenly feel unbearable. Conversations that used to satisfy you now feel like psychological torture. You find yourself withdrawing from situations that once defined your identity. This is not depression. This is readiness. This is the psyche withdrawing energy from what no longer serves your growth. Your unconscious is preparing you for the next level by making the current level intolerable. But when you withdraw, when you stop showing up the way you used to, people interpret it as rejection, and they respond with hatred. The third sign is what I call the pressure cooker feeling. You sense something building inside you, a restlessness, an urgency, a knowing that change is coming whether you choose it consciously or not. Your sleep changes. You wake at 3 in the morning with your mind racing, your appetite changes. You lose interest in food, or you cannot stop eating. Your body knows before your conscious mind accepts it. This is your psyche generating the psychological pressure needed to break through your old identity. Most people try to suppress this feeling with distractions, addictions, and busyness. They drink more, they work more, they scroll more, anything to avoid the intensity of transformation. But the pressure only builds. And as it builds, as your energy becomes more volatile and unpredictable, the people around you sense danger. They sense that you are about to break free, and they mobilize to stop you. Here is where it gets dangerous. When transformation is close, when you are on the verge of claiming your power, self-sabotage kicks in hardest. But it does not come from you alone. It comes through the people around you. I have documented this pattern across hundreds of cases. The hatred you experience is not random. It is a coordinated psychological attack designed to pull you back into your old identity. Think about the last time you were close to a major breakthrough, a promotion, a new relationship with someone who actually valued you, a creative project that could change your life. What happened? Did someone close to you suddenly create a crisis that demanded your attention? Did a family member get sick right when you needed to focus on your goal? Did a friend betray you in a way that consumed all your emotional energy? Did people start questioning your judgment, suggesting you are moving too fast, warning you about getting too confident, reminding you of past failures? Did you find yourself in sudden conflicts with people who had been neutral toward you for years? Did criticism come from unexpected places? Did people you barely know feel entitled to comment on your choices? These are not random events. These are your psyche and the collective unconscious collaborating to protect you from the terror of success. Because success means visibility. Success means responsibility. Success means you can no longer hide behind the excuse that you never had a chance. Success means you have to maintain that new level. You have to live up to your potential. You have to become the person you have always known you could be. And that feels more dangerous than staying stuck. So the hatred intensifies right when you are most vulnerable, right when you are stepping through the gateway. And most people interpret this hatred as evidence that they are on the wrong path. They turn back, they apologize for their ambition, they shrink again, and everyone relaxes. But here is the truth. Avoiding hatred is not about staying small. It is not about being more likable. It is not about waiting for permission or the right circumstances to finally appear. Understanding why people hate you when you evolve is about allowing. It is about stopping your resistance to your own emergence. It is about accepting that growth will cost you relationships and choosing growth anyway. I discovered that people do not fail to individuate because they lack ability. They fail because they cannot tolerate the psychological reality of being hated for their power. They cannot tolerate being misunderstood. They cannot tolerate being called selfish for having boundaries. They cannot tolerate being excluded from groups that once defined their identity. They cannot handle being seen as the villain in someone else's story. They cannot handle having former friends spread rumors about them. They cannot handle family members choosing sides against them. They cannot handle the loneliness that comes before new aligned relationships form. So they sabotage themselves. They create familiar patterns of smallness. They apologize for things they should not apologize for. They let others define their reality. They abandon their goals right before the breakthrough. They return to dysfunction because dysfunction feels like home. This identity feels safe. It feels known, even when that home is burning down around them, even when staying small is slowly killing their soul. Right now, you are being asked to burn that home down yourself, to walk away from the version of you that everyone is comfortable with, to become the person your psyche has been preparing you to be. And that is terrifying because the emergent self has no script. You do not know how to be that person yet. You do not know how to hold power without apologizing for it. You do not know how to maintain boundaries without guilt. You do not know how to exist in your fullness without making yourself smaller to soothe others. But you are not becoming someone new. You are becoming who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and trauma and fear. The person you were before you learned that your brightness was a problem, before you learned that your power threatened others, before you learned to hate yourself for wanting more. When you start to evolve beyond your family system, beyond your culture, beyond the collective agreements about who you are allowed to be, the collective unconscious pushes back. This is the silent war. This is why transformation feels lonely at first. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are disrupting the psychological contract that kept everyone comfortable. People who were comfortable with the diminished version of you become uncomfortable with the emerging version. Your freedom becomes a mirror that reflects their self-imposed limitations. Your courage highlights their cowardice. Your refusal to stay small exposes their investment in smallness. They do not hate you because you changed. They hate you because your change reveals that change is possible. And if change is possible, then they are responsible for their stagnation. When you individuate, you will lose people. You must lose people. This is not tragedy. This is liberation. The relationships built on your smallness cannot survive your expansion. The connections that required your silence cannot tolerate your voice. And that is not a failure of relationship. That is the natural consequence of evolution. You do not need to become someone different. You need to stop pretending to be someone you are not. You need to stop performing the role that keeps others comfortable while slowly destroying you. Your transformation is not an attack on others, but they will experience it as one. And you must be willing to be hated for your growth. You must be willing to be misunderstood. You must be willing to walk alone until you find others who are also willing to pay the price of becoming real. The way forward. First, you must recognize your addiction to being liked. You have organized your entire personality around avoiding conflict and maintaining approval. This is not kindness. This is self-abandonment. You must see how much energy you spend managing other people's emotions, how much you edit yourself in conversation, how much you shrink to fit into spaces that are too small for your soul. Every time you feel the urge to explain yourself, to justify your choices, to defend your boundaries, you must pause. You must recognize this as the old identity trying to survive. Second, you must integrate your golden shadow. You must reclaim the power, the confidence, the audacity you have been hiding. You have been told these qualities are negative: arrogance, selfishness, ego. But these are distortions. What others call arrogance is often self-respect. What they call selfishness is often healthy boundaries. What they call ego is often rightful ownership of your gifts. You must stop apologizing for your strength. You must stop dimming your intelligence to make others comfortable. You must claim the qualities you have been taught to suppress. Third, you must grieve the old identity. You must let it die. This is not metaphorical. There will be moments of genuine grief, sadness for the relationships you will lose, fear about who you are becoming, doubt about whether the cost is worth it. You must allow this grief without letting it stop you. You must understand that you are mourning the death of a false self, and that death is necessary for your rebirth. Fourth, you must claim your power before you have evidence that you deserve it. You cannot wait until everyone approves. You cannot wait until you feel ready. You cannot wait until the hatred stops. You must act from your highest self even when it feels like pretending, especially when it feels like pretending. This is how you bridge the gap between who you have been and who you are becoming. You inhabit the new identity through action, not permission. Fifth, you must protect your transformation from collective pressure. This means limiting contact with people who are invested in your smallness. This means not defending your choices to those who will never understand them. This means creating space where your emergence can happen without constant attack. You are not being cruel, you are being realistic. You cannot transform in an environment that punishes transformation. Sixth, you must learn to tolerate being hated without abandoning yourself. This is the crucial skill. When the attacks come, when people turn cold, when relationships dissolve, you must feel the discomfort without returning to your old patterns. You must sit with the loneliness. You must breathe through the anxiety. You must remind yourself that this hatred is not evidence of failure,
It is evidence of transformation.
Seventh, understand that living in your power is not a destination. It is a practice. Every day you will be tempted to return to smallness. Every day you will have opportunities to shrink for approval. And every day you must choose your truth over their comfort. You must choose your evolution over their expectations. This is not a one-time decision. This is a daily recommitment to the person you are becoming. This is your turn. Not because the universe suddenly decided to be kind, but because you are finally ready to let yourself emerge. You are finally done with the diminished self. You are finally willing to be hated for your truth rather than loved for your performance. The signs are already appearing. The pressure, the restlessness, the dissatisfaction with relationships that once felt sufficient, the growing intolerance for situations that require you to be less than you are. These are not random. These are your psyche preparing for transformation. Your unconscious knows what is coming. It is generating the psychological conditions necessary for breakthrough. The hatred you sense is part of this process. It is the collective unconscious trying to pull you back, and it is also the test of your readiness. I have always believed that people who successfully complete this process become individuated. They stop living in reaction to collective expectations. They stop organizing their lives around approval. They claim their power not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. They are hated at first, but eventually they are respected, not by everyone, but by those who matter, by those who have also paid the price of becoming real. They live authentically because they are psychologically aligned with their own truth. They maintain boundaries because they understand that self-betrayal is the greatest betrayal. They walk alone when necessary because they know that authentic connection can only happen between authentic selves. Here is what you must do. First, acknowledge your unconscious addiction to approval without judgment. See how it has shaped your choices. See how much power you have given to other people's opinions. See how you have betrayed yourself repeatedly to maintain relationships that were always conditional. Second, decide that smallness is no longer acceptable, not as a nice idea, not as a future goal, right now, in this moment. Decide that you will no longer edit yourself, you will no longer apologize for your growth, you will no longer make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. Third, identify one action you can take this very day that aligns with your authentic self. One boundary you can set, one truth you can speak, one choice that serves your evolution rather than others' expectations. Do not wait for courage. Act and let courage follow. Fourth, expect resistance, not as evidence of failure, but as evidence of transformation. When people push back, when they express disappointment, when they withdraw affection, understand this is the process. Do not let their reactions determine your path. Feel the discomfort and keep moving. Fifth, find allies who can witness your evolution without trying to hinder it. Not cheerleaders who tell you what you want to hear, but people who understand the cost of transformation because they have paid it themselves. People who will not pressure you to return to smallness when things get difficult. Sixth, commit to the daily practice of choosing from your higher self. Every morning, ask yourself what the whole realized version of you would do today, and then do that, especially when it feels uncomfortable, especially when it triggers others. Seventh, ask yourself, what would the person I am becoming do in this situation? Not the person you have been, not the person others expect you to be, the person your soul is calling you to become. Do that, even when it feels like pretending, especially when it feels like pretending, because that is how you bridge the gap. You act as if until you become. You are standing at the gateway. The choice is yours. You can return to the familiar pattern of smallness and pretend you did not hear these truths. You can continue organizing your life around avoiding hatred. You can keep betraying yourself to maintain relationships that were never built to survive your growth. Or you can step through the gateway and become who you actually are. You can tolerate being hated by those who are invested in your smallness. You can walk alone until you find others who are also committed to becoming real. The psyche moves toward wholeness. Your transformation is not just personal, it is collective. When you stop shrinking and start claiming your power, when you stop performing and start existing authentically, you change the frequency of possibility for everyone. You give others permission to emerge. You prove that the cost is worth it. You are finally ready to be hated for your truth. You are finally choosing your evolution over others' comfort. You are finally willing to pay the price of becoming real. And that choice changes everything. Welcome to the beginning of who you were always meant to be.